The key thing is, I know the theme is about developmental trauma, but in a way, what I want to focus on is how that kind of early relationship, the sort of parent-infant relationship, is so hugely influential in that. And I think the thing to draw out from that is that it's not just the experience of trauma or developmental trauma ongoing that is important, how much or how little, if you like. It's also the fact that the relationship does so much to provide resilience in those experiences. So when the parent-infant relationship is really strong and attuned and effective and kind of sensitive, then actually, even when traumas come along, the baby is developing more resilience to survive them, or to incorporate them into experience, if you like. So this is why it matters so much. And this is just a quote from that report that, we know that a nurturing relationship can make a child more resilient to negative events, and without a nurturing relationship, supporting young children experience negative events as more traumatic. So when we talk about trauma, I think it's really important to understand that trauma is a very relative experiential thing that, and this is why when we see sort of young people later on in CAMS and then adults later on in adult life, and that includes sometimes some of the parents we're working with, what they have experienced as traumatic, or what feels traumatic to one may not be so traumatic to another. And a lot of it will do with the underlying kind of resilience that they may have. So who are we? Okay, so we are the Gwent Parent Infant Mental Health Services. You've met a couple of them this morning already. So Laura and Orion. Orion has sort of joined us fairly recently as our sort of specialist parent infant mental health visitor. And we covered the whole of Gwent. Later, after I've spoken and after we've had a little break, you'll be meeting Belinda, who is our music therapist, who works particularly quite a lot into Monmouthshire, so it's very relevant to today's forum. We really focus on the parent-infant relationship, and what I was asked to do in sort of briefly introducing ourselves is to really sort of say, well, how are we different from the perinatal team? Because I think sometimes, there may be some uncertainty about, well, where do I refer this family? Who are the best services? We do work alongside the perinatal team from time to time with those families where actually it may be that some joined up working is more relevant. But I think the key thing to say is that we work with families antenatally right through to 2 years. So in terms of the kind of the age that we work with, there is a slightly wider kind of remit there. But we also sit in public health nursing, in health visiting, in the health board. So what that means is that we are coming very much from the developmental perspective, and our primary focus is really around relationship. And so where there is a concern around the parent-infant relationship, that things maybe aren't sort of going as well and as smoothly as would be optimal. Maybe there's a parent who is struggling to bond with her little baby, or is really feeling very anxious about the baby that she's expecting, or a dad who feels out of his depth, or, sometimes there may be mental health difficulties, but we would often be working with parents where their mental health difficulties would not really reach the threshold for something like the perinatal services. So our focus is really around that relationship, and that's where we do a lot of the work. We do parent-infant psychotherapy, we do watch, wait and wonder, we do sort of video work, always trying to really focus on building a strong bond and relationship. And I'm very happy at the end today if people have any questions or they want to just clarify from that. But the key thing here is that we know, as Winnicott said 50, 60 years ago now, there is no such thing as a baby on their own. The infant exists within, as he put it in at the time, maternal care, but we would obviously think about maternal care, paternal care, and partners and so on, primary caregivers. And what are some of the things that are important? I am going to dash through a little bit because I'm just aware of time. Bonding with the unborn baby. So this is very important, and more, I think we get referrals from neonatal, from midwives, and so on. We are very mindful that those kind of feelings that parents have even before baby comes along are crucial and often very predictive of how the bonding and attachment may look afterwards. Feeling a connection with the imagined baby and beginning to reflect on the fact that the baby is a separate entity that a relationship can be formed to. Obviously, Orion and Laura have talked about brain development. There's a lovely quote there from Sue Gerhardt, who you saw in the videos, really about how important these early experiences are in terms of feeding neurodevelopment, just in the way that food is so important in terms of feeding the baby in other ways. We look at things like caregiver sensitivity to the infant and how important that is. And again, very predictive. So we know, for instance, that the two things that are most predictive of kind of attachment security at age 8 are the caregiver sensitivity to their infant and their capacity for reflective functioning, which is the capacity to sort of think about your baby's states emotionally and mentally, whilst holding in mind your own state of mind. So if you think about it, a lovely example of that is if baby is falling apart or crying uncontrollably and you don't know what's wrong, it creates a huge amount of anxiety in you as a parent, and you have to hold both those states in mind, and you can't really help the baby to soothe and calm if you yourself can't soothe and calm. So you have to kind of work out your own feelings and baby's feelings and be able to reflect back and forth on that at the same time. This all happens automatically and instinctively, but it can be grown through some of the kind of close work that we do around the relationship. So obviously the infant's attachment to the primary caregiver, and then we would be thinking about relational trauma. I'm not going to show this video. This is, some of you will have seen it. It's the from the Circle of Security, and it's a sort of a slightly up-to-date version of the still face video, which really makes the point of just how distressing and disturbing it can be for a baby to have a lack of response from their caregiver, even for a minute. And it's so I'm going to keep going. So what I'm going to look at instead is some of the work by Beatrice Beebe, who's a developmental psychologist who's been working for a long time in America with parents and babies. And she started developing a process called microanalysis, where they film the interactions, a bit like with the still face, where you can see both sides, both the mother and the baby in this case. Then slows it down and looks at it frame by frame. And what she discovered was that there was a massive complexity going on in the parent-infant interactions, even over a matter of seconds, and that you can begin to see just how deeply involved the back and forth responses are between mother and baby, or father and baby. And what you can also see is that there were many times when there were small ruptures or things not going quite as well, which quickly gathered in. So quickly, actually, that when you see it in real time, you don't often spot it. And that's normal, and that's actually extremely healthy. So we know that rupture and repair is a very important process all the time. In this particular example, rather than looking at something where there's a lot going horribly wrong, this is actually a mother who's very well tuned into her baby. But there is a story, and in this case, the baby had very bad colic for the first few months of life. Now, the time at which this particular piece of video was done was around baby being 3.5, 4 months old. The colic has resolved, and baby is really okay now. And we're just going to have a quick look, I think. I'm going to ask you to have a quick look at the video, and then I might just ask for some comments, either in the chat or sort of verbally, but just very quickly after we've had a look at the first piece of video. I'll try here.
Baby had this Very, very difficult experience. We just happened to catch them at such an interesting moment of transition where the baby's colic had just receded and the baby was now calm, but the mother was still in colic mode.
I live in Long Island, so it takes a little while to get here. And we came in when my son was, I think, 3.5 months old. And my son was colicky, like for the first 4 months of his life. And it was hard. It was hard on him, and it was hard on me and my husband. So I tried to time it just perfectly. So he would nap in the car, and we would get out of the car, and we would go into the chamber, that's how we called it, and do the filming. Well, Max didn't like that plan at all. So we got there, and he was already a little fussy, and we did the filming.
Okay, we're ready. So first we're going to see the film in real time, and then we're going to see it frame by frame.
Oh, and now you gotta stay in that car seat a bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. I know you don't wear seats, but you gotta stay in this car seat just a little bit. Here, we can take this away.
Okay, I just wonder if there are any initial thoughts or sort of comments.
I guess I'm kind of curious about this, Paddy, because you frequently hear about parents who can be stuck in that sort of pre-post colicky world.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think for me, the sort of compelling thing is, and it's nice to take an example like this, is that it still looks really nice, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't, it doesn't look like it's going horribly wrong. And you can see that this is a mother and baby who are sort of quite attuned. I just, anyone else sort of had any comments on it?
Yes, Paddy. Hi.
Yes.
Aurea. I mean, the thing that strikes me around this sort of scenario that we see repeatedly is that there's something about, so first of all, infants cry most frequently during the first 3 months of life without any reason other than it's developmental. And I do think what we call colic is something about mums not being able to contain that experience for themselves or their babies, which sort of fits, I think, with this clip in terms of the idea that she's still stuck in that mode. And I think part of the problem with that might be around the medical model. So there's a problem rather than this is something that is, developmental. So I just think, that whole construct is quite an interesting one for us as professionals to think about. So it's not quite about the clip, but it's a really good sort of illustration of that.
Yes, thank you, Owen. That's beautifully put, and I think it really does just highlight, doesn't it, how in this particular framework of thinking about things, we can really think about the impact of the relationship at a very kind of physiological, developmental level. Yeah. That it is absolutely the relationship. So, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to show a slightly longer sequence now. It's about 3 or 4 minutes where they look at this frame by frame together. Both the first few seconds, and you're aware it's just been a few seconds that you've seen, and then the later seconds where it was 5 minutes later, which was after they'd been able to discuss some of what mother was feeling. So let me just go for it.
This is hours, minutes, seconds, and 30th. So we're going to go from second 7 to second 8, right? So from 7 to 8, watch the mother do mock surprise. Mock surprise. Mock surprise. Now 7 to 8, watch the baby. he slightly orients to her. His head moves to the left, and his left hand moves a little. See that? So he slightly orients to her. He's still looking at her. And the mom has the baby's foot in her hand. Actually, she's both feet in her hands. So now, 8 to 9, the mother sort of plays with her face, and the baby watches. There's a little shift in the baby's mouth on the left, and his left hand moves. So he's watching her very closely. Then the baby sort of waves at her, acknowledges her in a way. Then the mother opens back up into her smile, 9 to 10. Baby's hand comes down. So the mother has a big smile, and the baby has only an interest face. So here we have just an ordinary moment where the mother seems to want to bring the baby up from interest into maybe more playful, more smiling faces. That's second 10. So then she flirts with him a little. She moves her head up like that. And the baby's hands move, but the mouth goes into a kind of compressed lips. Compressed lips is sort of a little tension, like that. Then mother has a nice smile, but the baby is really only still in an interest phase. And then the mother smiles some more from 10 to 11, and the baby is not smiling more, stays in an interest phase, but doesn't smile more. So this is kind of an ordinary type of very slight mismatch, you might say, where the mother's in a higher range, sort of medium positive range, and the baby is in interest range. And this happens all the time, that the parent wants to bring the baby up, but this baby's not coming up. Okay. But he's still looking at her, still engaged. And then the mother's still playing, seeing if she can get the baby to play with her, and the baby is responding, right, with the mouth and the hand, but he's not actually becoming more positive. He's staying in the interest range. Then 13, the mother heads go down a little, so less smile, and that's the moment the baby looks away, which is also ordinary. The babies look away when they become a little over-aroused. They re-regulate and they come right back into the engagement as soon as they re-regulate. So the baby looks away and then turns away a little more. And you watch the mother just slightly monitoring that with her mouth. Mouth opens a little. And then the baby turns a little further away. A little further away. And now you see the mother going, uh-oh. A little uh-oh. And she breathes in. And then the baby goes, this is an arch. This generally means the baby's a little uncomfortable, so the baby has a little arch. And the mother, you see the mother breathe in like she sort of gets it, uh-oh. And then the baby shows a little more discomfort. And you see the mother going, ooh, ooh. So she really, here, is actually joining a discomfort that the baby's showing. Right, this little arch thing is a little uncomfortable, and she's joining that little bit of distress with that ooh face. And then she closes her eyes a little, and then the baby looks at her. Baby comes back, looks at her, and they have a moment of mutual gaze, and they're both in the interest range. Then the mother says, ooh, right? And when I asked her, what does this face say? She says something like, you don't like this, right? Ooh, you don't like this? Is this uncomfortable for you? And then even more, ooh, you don't like this? And the baby's okay, right? The baby's watching her and the baby's calm. So this is also a bit of a mismatch, right? Because she's in a way overreacting to the baby's little bit of discomfort that he showed. And she's anticipating that the baby is gonna lose it and go into colic mode. And I think that negative face represents her anticipation of the baby's intense distress. And it probably represents how she also felt during those last 3 months of intense colic, how distressed she was.
So I'll stop there because I'm just so weird of time. And what I don't have time to show you is that Beatrice Beebe is describing very accurately the conversation that she has with the mother afterwards. And it's then that you see the sort of the 5 minutes later sequence where the interaction is much more relaxed and playful, and both mum and baby have relaxed. But the essential thing is that she's helping the mother to really identify that there's just something has got slightly in the way of completely relaxing into and reading and responding. It's a small rupture, but I'd like to just sort of end really with 1 minute of mum now talking about her own kind of reflections back on that, and how it's really sort of helped her to realize what was going on. I'm sorry it's been so clunky with the video today. It's just right, I think that will do. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So reviewing those tapes with Beatrice and seeing where we mismatched and where I was not able to match his affect and his upset showed me, I'm anxious, like I want him to be happy, I want him to be comfortable, but something in me just couldn't do it at that moment. And it also showed me that despite all the theory, you're not perfect. I think the second when Max starts to cry, we just go like overload. You know, we just like drop everything we're doing and we run to his rescue and we try everything, and maybe that's just too much. Maybe we just have to readjust because now he's getting better. That was 4 months. Like now he's getting better. And our like tolerance to his crying, I think it's not where it should be. So the filming was really helpful in that my husband and I, we could really sit down and be like, all right, so let's like reboot our system and let's try to like start over. Like, where are we now? What are we going to do now when he's crying? Like, maybe we don't have to run to his rescue right away. And we didn't. Sitting.
Okay, I shall stop there. So thank you. Any last questions before I hand this back to Sue?
Paddy Orion put a very interesting comment in the chat box. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it.
No, I haven't. Sorry, could you read it to me? I can't I can't actually see everything that I need to see here. So, yeah.
So, Orion, do you want to talk about it?
So it was following on from Bernie's comment, which was about we're used to identifying a medical reason for a problem with our children, and therefore we are often waiting for a medical solution. And, you know, thinking about very young babies in particular, you know, it's just struck me over the course of my career that medicalisation of child rearing sort of hijacks the parent-infant relationship. And I think, you know, I'm making the distinction between childbearing, which is the sort of perinatal mental health sort of medical model, and child rearing. And, you know, there's a long history to that, which in itself is interesting. But I think what it does is that it communicates to the parents who, you know, as parents, we have a neurobiological caregiving system, which is reciprocal to the infant attachment system, and that it's, you know, it is a system that's designed to promote infant survival. So parents are hypervigilant to problems or perceived problems in their children. And because we medicalise you know, sort of some aspects of infant development, like we commented on, that sort of regular, frequent crying in the first 3 months of life in particular, you know, that we sort of interrupt or intrude on that parent-infant relationship. So, you know, we communicate to them. I mean, it's a general sort of Western thing, I think, that sort of normal features of the infant, particularly the early infant, are a medical problem, because we don't have an explanation for that within the medical context. We have to understand it with another lens, which is why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Thank you. And yeah, so thank you. I think I mean, the other thing I wanted to just quickly add is, I know when we look at these videos like this, and it's a particularly sort of reflective mother who had also sort of worked with BB, it sort of maybe idealizes just how well the kind of process of working together in this way can go. But I just want to say it does reflect the work we do. And, you know, I've recently been working with a mother, and it's taken a bit longer, it's taken a few more sessions, but a very similar situation where the colic kind of set up something very difficult early on. And I just wanted to add another layer, which is that actually one of the things that was really important then through those sessions together with baby and reflecting was mother's ability to eventually speak about some of her own very mixed feelings when she was pregnant and this baby was coming along, including some quite negative feelings, but which felt that she couldn't verbalize and couldn't be said, because, you know, we do often over idealize, I think, the process of pregnancy and babyhood.